Hi. So as I was growing up in school, there was a lot of situations, like as I grew up, where I got a lot of input. Like obviously, when you're a kid, you get a lot of input from teachers and other students and tutors or whatever, and then you kind of like self-actualize it because you believe that because they're adults and they say it, it's true. I've got this notion, like it was inbuilt in me, that oh, you need to study so long in the day for it to be considered successful. The bar was set so high for how long you had to study for it to be considered effective that I just thought I was a huge failure for studying just like 30 minutes or an hour a day. Because back then I had a lot of passion, like a lot of passion to get good grades and level up in real life and level up in school and show my parents that like, oh yeah, look at my grade. I wanted to, but then my motivation, my morale was like lowered because I just couldn't find myself able to study for more than like 30 minutes at a time or an hour at a time, because all these teachers and all these other students and everyone was like, oh, I studied 7 hours yesterday. Oh, I studied 8 hours yesterday. I studied 9 hours yesterday. Yesterday I barely slept. I was studying from 12 a.m. to 2 a.m. because I had this test, and there was so much like input of me being like input to me being like, oh, I only studied like 30 minutes from like 4 p.m. to 4:30, and then I got bored. So now I feel like a failure. There was this other situation where when I was graduating, it's insane. When I was graduating, I had basically what happens is they do a big ceremony for the graduation, obviously. So you walk up and you get your thing, and then you're like, oh, this is the guy, and his good traits are this, and then whatever. So we had that for our 12th grade graduation. What happened was a principal from another school came to give a speech to all of us. I don't know why it was another school. That's so weird, but. He came to give a speech to us about like studying and working hard and university life and all that stuff. And we were just sitting, everyone's in the ground, it's all lined up, and we're all just watching him on the stage telling a speech. And what happened was, I heard him say stuff like, oh, the best way to study is to just study all day, just sleep as little as you can. And, especially the food you eat, don't eat all these like South Indian foods. Basically, I'm South Indian, and like we have like very hefty, like calorie dense foods, which is like really nice, right? But that has nothing to do with studying, mind you. But he was saying like, oh, don't eat all these South Indian foods, you gotta eat like, the small snacks like North Indian food. So you gotta eat like samosas, and also get like small little quick snacks. Don't eat big meals, just, study, and then in between eat like a little meal, and then study for like another 4 hours, and then repeat until you go to sleep. And then also cut down on some of your sleep so you can study more. He was essentially telling us, he used these words: if you can do it, get a tub of ice cream, put it in your fridge or freezer, and then whenever you get hungry while studying, go and eat that ice cream and then come back to study. It was the dumbest shit I've heard in my life. We were talking about it after the whole graduation ceremony. I was like, what is he saying? And don't take his advice. Mind you, don't take his advice, especially the diet advice. I was like getting into dieting and like, optimizing my health. So me, out of everyone hearing this, I was getting ticked off. I was like, what? You are a principal of a school and you're telling kids to eat ice cream and not eat like proper meals, and then not eat South Indian meals? Like, what is happening? But anyway, that was just like a funny story. But the point is, don't believe this notion that you gotta study like 8 to 9 hours a day. Because even if you're a subpar student, like you're an average student, you're not getting great marks, but you're not really like failing every subject, you're kind of in between or like right below average, you don't need to study more than like 3 to 4 hours a day, or even less. Because the classic like old school study techniques that they taught us in school was essentially this, right? Like, oh, read the textbook, write notes or whatever. And generally that doesn't work because it doesn't mimic exam situations. I made so many videos on this before, but if you want to study very effectively, you have to mimic the exam situation, because in the end, you are practicing for the exam situation. Okay, let's say the exam is on 10th October, for example, and it's October 1st. So you have 10 days to study for the exam. Now, if it's on 10th October, what are you practicing for that's happening on 10th October? Really think about it, right? What are you practicing for on 10th October? For 10th October, you're studying for going to school, sitting down in a room with all of your other classmates or, different classmates, and then getting a piece of paper with a bunch of questions on it, getting a blank piece of paper where you can write the answers, looking at the question, being like, what's the answer? Waiting like 30 seconds, your brain gives you the answer, and then you write what you remember as the answer. And then you do that for the other 50 questions, and then you give the paper, and then you wait for the test results. Are you rereading the textbook in that exam hall? Are you writing notes in your own little handwriting? No. Right? Are you rereading the chapters, recapping, reading the summary? No, not really, right? Sure, that's helpful. It kind of like helps you remember, but then it doesn't really like help you in the exam, because in the exam they don't give you a textbook, right? It would be nice if they gave you a textbook and it was an open book exam, but most exams are closed book. So that's out of the picture. So how do you really study? The first way to study really, really good is to study shorter, but test yourself. Test yourself constantly. Now, like I said, you are training yourself to go to the exam and mimic the exam situation, because the more you've done the exam situation, you've mimicked it, you're familiar to it, you've done it before. So when you enter, you have low anxiety, you've done this before, your body's built to handle this. So it's gonna answer more questions than if you didn't do it at all. Right? Now that I say it, it makes kind of sense, right? And this sapped away so much of my time, so much of my energy back in the day, because I didn't know this, right? I thought you just got to reread and hope for the best that you remember it. Why are you leaving it up to chance and your like brain to like remember it? Why don't you take some action, take some accountability, and take control over your studying skills? Because if you just read the textbook and then hope that you remember it, it's like, come on, that's kind of stupid. Why don't you read the textbook for like 30 minutes, and then get like an AI or use a past question paper, and then just test yourself. Test yourself constantly, being like, okay, you set a 15-minute timer, you have 10 questions in front of you, try to answer as many as possible. It's okay if you get a bunch of them wrong. It's okay if your brain's like, oh, what's the answer? It's actually very good if your brain's like, oh, what's the answer? Because now you're priming it to remember. And if you truly remembered it, you would write it. If you didn't remember it, now it's primed to when you read the material next, you're gonna have an easier time remembering it. Trust me, I wish I knew this more. Like, I was considered a very below average student, but I'm good at testing. But if I had enough time, right, I would literally be so good at testing if I just studied like 1 to 2 hours a day and then just tested myself for half of it, instead of just reading material. Because when you only read material and you never test yourself, you're leaving it up to chance and luck that when you're in the exam, you slept enough so that you remember, and you hope that your brain is like sharp, you hope that the coffee you drank in the morning is enough, you hope that the diet you ate the past 4 days is enough. You're leaving it up to a bunch of chance. Why are you leaving it up to chance? You can take control. You can put your like hands on the horns and be like, yo, I'm gonna control this. And sure, you might still suck at it. And that's okay, because you've never done it before. I still suck at it, right? I say it like I'm really good at it, but if I'm being honest, I still suck at it because it's a new thing for me. I just found out that this is the best way to study. Remember, testing yourself for like 30 minutes, like half an hour, is worth 10 hours of studying. You can imagine if you studied for 10 hours, like you took a textbook and you just sat there and you did what the other principal told and being like, yo, study for like 10 hours straight. And you studied. You'd read the first 3 chapters and you'd have them fresh in your mind. And then as you read the chapter 4, 5, 6, you forget the first 3 chapters. So you go back and recap, and that takes like 4 or 5 hours totally. And then you try that again. And then you have a bunch of information, right? Then you probably remember by the 10-hour mark everything that you studied. You can agree on this. But what if you just tested yourself for 30 minutes after reading 1 chapter? Think about it. Just read 1 chapter like once or twice and you test yourself. 10 questions, for example. You answer only 4. Fine. You've answered 4. You know the first 4 you know now, because once you've tested it, your brain's remembered it. You've mimicked the exam situation. Now your brain will probably never forget the first 4. Or you can recap once more and then you'll never forget. The other 6, now your brain's primed to remember it. So then when you read it again, now your brain's like, oh, that was the answer. And then the next time you test yourself, boom, you completely learned a whole chapter within like 45 minutes. And then you can do that for the rest of the chapters. Once you practice this more and more, you'll get way better at it. Just like a video game, you'll improve your skill at doing this, and you'll learn so much. If you like this video and you want to see more, click the subscribe button. And if you like this video a lot, click the like button. If you want to see more videos right now from me, you can click my face down there. A bunch of my videos will pop up. And I hope to see you in another video. Bye-bye.